Well, hey, everybody. My name is Claire Davis. I am a technical specialist on the education and advocacy team at Oregon Tilth. For those who don't know, Oregon Tilth is an organic certifier and nonprofit. We're based out of Corvallis, Oregon. And I'm here today as a representative of the Northwest Transition to Organic Partnership Program. And I'm going to give you guys kind of an overview of what it looks like to grow organically, certified organically, that is, the steps to get certified, and yeah, all that stuff. Then JJ, my colleague, will follow up with kind of specific opportunities to Alaska, dealing with certification opportunities, markets, etc. Before I get started, a little bit about me. I started my career as an engineer, then saw the light and became a farmer. I've been farming for the last 4 years in the Nevada area, kind of high desert farming with small scale diversified vegetable farms, and that's been really fun. But I was kind of missing like the bigger impact stuff, so I joined Oregon Tilth as part of this program to help producers who are interested in transition to organic. I'm not from Alaska, but my mom was born in Sitka and grew up in Anchorage, and so I'm excited to blend this work trip with some family visit time after this conference. And yeah, I think, oh, I'm wearing an eye patch because I like cosplaying as a pirate. No, I'm having some type of allergic thing, but we're all good. So yeah, we can just jump right in. Yes, maybe. So I'll start out with kind of going over some key organic principles and steps to getting certified organic. I'll also talk about resources out there for people who are interested in transitioning, and I'll talk about that transition to organic partnership program called TOP a little bit more. Once my presentation is done, should take 15 to 20 minutes. JJ will jump in and talk about opportunities, markets, and the future of organic certification here in Alaska. And if you guys don't mind, we'll just save questions. We're gonna leave tons of time at the end of the session, so we'll just have questions then. All right, so I'll start with key principles of what it means to farm organically, and then shift into the steps for organic cert. So yeah, the definition of organic, I don't typically read from slides, but I really like this quote. This is from the National Organic Program, the regulations themselves. An organic system is a production system that is managed in accordance with the regulations by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that 1, foster the cycling of resources, 2, promote ecological balance, and 3, conserve biodiversity. So I feel like often certified organic operations, it's described as a system of subtractions or swapping one input for another. And it's true that materials are a really big part of what it means to farm organically. But in a bigger picture, it's also about building a holistic system that's kind of mimicking natural processes in order to manage an agricultural system. So yeah, you're kind of making the soil more healthy, which makes your plants more healthy, which makes them less susceptible to diseases and pests in the first place. And you kind of build around that cycle, kind of trying to stick to these 3 main goals. So let's get into it. The key organic principles, I'm talking about the main 4. I put a little asterisk on the first one by soil because I understand, especially here, mariculture is a really big deal and soil doesn't really have a part in that. I included it just because it is the basis for many of the agricultural systems out there, and it's important to touch on here, if you don't mind. One of the requirements of the organic program is to maintain or improve the physical, chemical, and biological condition of the soil and minimize erosion. So this can be done in a lot of ways. You can use conservation tilling to kind of keep the soil microbiome as intact as you can, minimize erosion that way. You can be cover cropping, you can be performing soil tests and adding natural ways of organic matter like compost and manure, etc. So that's one of the main key principles. And then the next is seeds and planting stock. So seeds and stock in an organic system, in an organic operation, must be organic unless not commercially available. So this gives producers a little bit of leeway. If you can't find the seeds or stock you need in the quantity, quality, or form that you need for your operation, it is okay to source non-organic seed. What you need to make sure if you do that is that that seed is not treated and that it is non-GMO. There's been some sad instances in the past where someone used treated seeds and that treatment on the seed is a prohibited substance. It can really knock you back in terms of organic readiness. One note, seedlings must always be organic. Annual seedlings that you're transplanting into the ground must always be organic. Pest, weed, and disease management. So you are required to use management practices to prevent pests, weeds, and diseases. Prevent is the key word here. The NOP, the National Organic Program, really encourages preventative methods as your first line of defense. So this could be crop rotation to break up disease and pest cycles. This could be fostering habitat for beneficial insects or raptor perches or bat boxes or bird boxes. All of these would be ways, clearing a field after you harvest it, sanitizing your equipment. All of these would be ways to kind of try and break up those cycles of pests and diseases before they actually cause problems for you. In the instance that preventative methods don't work very well, you can definitely use mechanical methods and physical methods like livestock grazing, weeding, mechanical weeding, all that good stuff. And then finally, if all that fails, you can use approved materials as inputs like diatomaceous earth to help with pest problems. You just want to make sure that those materials you're using have been approved by the National Organic Program. And I'll get into that later, how you can check for that. And finally, biodiversity and conservation. I feel like this one goes kind of hand in hand with a couple of the others. You want to maintain or improve the natural resources and biodiversity of the operation, including soil and water quality. So again, another emphasis on soil there, but this can be done really easily by doing the same things that you would do for the pests and weeds. You can implement bat boxes, you can implement raptor perches, you can plant pollinator-friendly wildflowers on your operation. If you have riparian areas, you definitely want to try and manage those and protect them. So all of these work together to kind of address that natural cycles type of production that I was trying to explain earlier. And I want to also pause for a second and say I know a lot of Alaska producers already follow a lot of these principles, and it's more of a question of what's with the certification versus not. So yeah, moving right along. If you are interested in becoming certified organic, you're going to fall into one of two buckets. One is that on your operation, a prohibited substance has been applied sometime within the last 3 years. If that's the case, then to transition to organic, it'll take 3 years from the date of the last application of that prohibited substance. So in those 3 years, 36 months, you cannot use any prohibited materials. You must start to use approved organic materials only. And then after 3 years have passed, the date of the 3 years since your last application of prohibited substance, you can harvest a crop, your first crop, as certified organic. If no prohibited substances were applied in the last 3 years, say that you own the land or you know who owned the land, or you can get in contact with who owned the land, and everyone's very sure that nothing prohibited has been added. Either you can sign a form or the previous owner can sign an affidavit just saying, yep, we're all good, approved substances only. And if that's the case, fantastic, you guys can apply for certification immediately. So how does this all work? I had someone ask me today, what is the difference between a certifier and an inspector? What is the NOP? How does this all work? All really good questions. So at the very top, we have the National Organic Program from the USDA. They're the ones who come up with the regulations. They're the ones who enforce the regulations, and they are the ones who accredit the certifiers. And so the certifiers are the middleman here. Producers never interact with the National Organic Program. We always go through an accredited certifier. So certifiers are third-party agents that certify the operations themselves. This can be private organizations, nonprofits like Oregon Tilt, where I work, state programs, WSDA, foreign governments, etc. And then finally, we have the people actually doing the work. We have the farmers, ranchers, processors, and handlers. Farmers and ranchers are commonly called just producers, and processors and handlers are the folks who are transporting, packaging, creating value-added products out of those raw products to begin with. There are 4 scopes of certification that you can get. It's crops, wild crops, which is maybe you're going out in the forest and finding mushrooms and harvesting those, livestock, and handling. And you can get certified for one of those. You can get certified for all of those scopes if it's within your operations wheelhouse. And then quick caveat again, the inspector, where does the inspector fit into all this? A certifier hires an inspector to come to your operation and perform an unbiased third-party inspection. They fill out an inspection report and give it back to the certifier, and the certifier is the one who actually makes a decision as to whether your operation is certified or not. The inspector has 0 decision-making power in that. So if you're interested in becoming certified organic, I highly recommend reading the organic regulations. I think before I got this job and I was a farmer, I pictured a 200-page, super dense legalese situation that no farmer has any time to deal with ever. And it's not that, luckily. It's actually, you can find them online in the ECFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, under Title VII, which is agriculture. Part 205 contains the entirety of the National Organic Program regulations. And in these regulations, it tells you how to grow things. It tells you the rules involving when you can use the word organic, when something is, 70% organic versus 100% organic, how do the labeling rules change, all that good stuff. And if you're also feeling like, man, I really don't want to read these, or it seems like a lot, or I wish someone could give me a push or help explain something to me, that's my job. That's what I'm here for. You can call me or email me and we'll set up an hour and just answer any questions that you might have. And nothing is too big or too small. You can even just dip your toe in and ask what the certification thing is all about. Last thing I'll say on this is that it's all broken up into really easy to read sections. So if you're just crops and not livestock, you can skip the livestock stuff and just read what's pertinent to you. And it really doesn't take all that long. All right, the meat of the matter here, allowed and prohibited substances. So when you are transitioning to organic, or if you already are certified organic, you must only use approved substances in your operation. For folks who are already certified and have a certifier, it's really easy. You can just ask your certifier, hey, can I use this material or not? And they'll give you a yes or no answer. If they don't know, they can even perform a material review for you. In the instances where you're transitioning and you're not yet working with a certifier, there's a lot of different ways you can check your own materials. You can use the USDA national list of allowed and prohibited substances. That's in those regulations I just referenced. You can use OMRI. I'm sure all of you are super familiar with OMRI because they have a seal on a lot of agricultural products. OMRI is a third-party organic materials review institute, nonprofit, and they have a massive database that's searchable of generically named things, brand name things. And when you type in whatever you're interested in using, it'll just pull up exactly what you need to know. It's approved with restrictions. You can use it, but only in XYZ, or it's prohibited, or it's approved with no restrictions. And that's a really useful resource. I highly recommend it. Finally, some state departments publish their own lists. The Washington State Department of Ag has a really wonderful list of approved materials as well. And that one's downloadable, which can be pretty helpful if your operation isn't, constantly connected to Wi-Fi. But like I said, always confirm all inputs and materials with your certifier if you have one. It's just a really good way to play it safe and make sure that you're only using approved materials on your operation. So how do you do it? We learn about what it means. How do you actually apply if you're interested? So applying for certification can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So if you're interested, I highly recommend applying well before you intend to harvest a certified organic crop. But you start by selecting your certifier, submitting your OSP, that's your organic system plan. That is essentially your application. It's your agreement between you and the certifier, and you tell the certifier how you're going to run your operation, that it is in line with the organic regulations. Your certifier reviews it. You have to pay your certification fees at this point, and then your certifier reviews your OSP, just quickly make sure you have all the stuff filled out, everything looks pretty good. And then you move on into the inspection portion. You want to schedule inspection well before harvest, just like I mentioned. And to prepare for inspection, you want to have a lot of your records available. When did XYZ get planted? What seeds did I use? When did I harvest it and how much was harvested? Who did I sell it to? And all of this is because what's really important in an organic audit is the traceability of your products. You want to make sure, in the interest of honesty, you want to make sure that what you harvested and sold does match up with what you planted. If you sold 200 heads of lettuce and you only planted 5 lettuce plants, that's a little bit of a red flag. So you want to make sure of that. You also just want to make sure that you followed organic regulations from seed to sale all the way through the life cycle of that crop. And of course, you want to document any inputs used as well. And so after the inspector comes, remember the inspector has no decision-making power in this. They just write up the report, submit it to your certifier. Your certifier will review it, review your OSP again, maybe ask for more information, maybe you have it all. And at that point, they'll evaluate for compliance and they'll issue the certification decisions. You'll actually get the organic certificate, and then you will be allowed to use the USDA organic seal on your products. And finally, annual inspection review. Great, you got certified. Now it's time to kind of upkeep that. So every year you repay certification fees and you have an inspector come out to your operation again and just check in on things. Make sure that you're still sticking to the OSP, that plan that you submitted, and just keep your certifier up to date on, they're the boots on the ground, letting your certifier know what's actually happening at that operation. Certifiers who are working in Alaska, Oregon Till certifies all crop production in Alaska right now. And that's between 10 and 15 operations, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll definitely talk about this more later, but it has to do with fees and making it as affordable for the producers as possible. Other organic certifiers that work in the state include Where Food Comes From, CCOF, the Washington State Department of Ag, Organic Program. And all of these guys certify 1 to 2 operations in the state, and those operations tend to be processors, handlers, coffee roasters, et cetera. They're less focused on the crop production side of things. Okay, so everyone always wants to know what are the fees for very reasonable reasons, but fees vary by certifier. Each certifier can have their own fee schedule. They just have to publish it publicly. So if you're trying to research what certifier you want to use, check out their websites. Every single one has their fee schedule posted for you to read and understand. You can even give them a call and they'll chat out their fees with you. Some certifiers have first-time applicant fees, some don't. Some base the prices on a sliding scale, some of farm income, some just do a flat fee per crop that you're certifying. It really depends, so recommend doing your research, finding one that works best for you. But something important to note is that there's the certification fees, and then there's the inspection fees. And the certification fees are what it costs to get your application reviewed by a certification officer, someone who really knows their stuff, someone who can actually issue the certificate of certification. The inspection cost is a separate cost, and that's paying the inspector for their time to travel, their time to prepare for the report, their time to write out the report and submit it to your certifier. Those are 2 separate fees. And so this is where it becomes important to you Alaskans up here, that if you want to become certified, it's really best to find other operations and figure out what certifier they're already using. Because if you do that, you can share inspection costs across all of you. It's unfortunately, as of right now, there's not an inspector in the state of Alaska, and so it costs quite a bit to get someone from the lower 48 to come up and inspect an operation. And so if you can batch those together and work with other producers and other operations and say, hey, you're already certified, when is your inspection? Then get in contact with their certifier and try and get that inspection to occur at the same time. You'll diffuse those costs amongst all of those operations as opposed to each one bearing the brunt of it. And so if you're interested in finding other operations, but you have no idea where to start, I highly recommend the Organic Integrity Database, lovingly called the OID. It has a really phenomenal search feature. It's published by the USDA, but you can search for certifiers, or you can search for any certified operation in a certain state, in a certain country, you name it. So here, just as an example, I said, okay, I want all the certified operations in Alaska. And there's a much longer list than just the 3, but I just wanted to show this top part too. And once you see all these producers, you can reach out to them and ask them, hey, 1, do you have any advice? 2, when is your inspection? Would you recommend Oregon Till? Because like I said, Oregon Till currently certifies all crop production. But this could be a really useful way to diffuse those costs for all of you guys. Okay, so you picked a certifier. It's time to work on your OSPs, your organic system plan. Again, this is your application to become organic. This is your agreement between yourself and your certifier. Components of an OSP include the land history, namely the last 3 years. Like I mentioned, any subsistence that have been applied. Buffer zones are a big one. Do all of your neighbors spray prohibited substances? And if so, how will you prevent your crops from becoming contaminated? What seeds and planting stock do you use? How are you managing your soil and pests? What's your harvest process? How do you store it? How do you transport it? Really big deal is the list of materials that you're using. This includes the sanitizers in your wash and pack, in addition to what you're adding to your soil. And finally, that record keeping I mentioned is to ensure you have that traceability for the inspector to be able to see from seed to sale what you have. Now we get to talk about my favorite thing, the TOP program. This is the Northwest Transition to Organic Partnership Program. And the TOP is a network assembled by the USDA's NOP to support transitioning and organic producers with mentorship and resources. A survey was done that showed that some of the main barriers for people applying for certification or wanting to pursue it was a lack of community, a lack of mentorship, and a total lack of assistance with understanding the regulations and all of that. And so TOP was a program created specifically to help those producers. There's 6 regions TOP operates across the country. So Alaska is part of the Northwest region, along with Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. And yeah, the common goal is to grow the network of organic producers and make it feel a little more community oriented rather than everyone just in their own silo. So the key pillars at the top, we have our lovely mentorship program. This connects transitioning producers with folks who are already certified organic. And the best part is that it is free for the transitioning producers to have that mentor, and the mentor themselves is paid for their time, because we all know farmers are a little too busy to do stuff for free all the time. We are constantly looking for new mentors and mentees. There are mentors available here in Alaska. And so if this program sounds interesting to you, definitely please spread the word and reach out to me. I'm happy to get you connected with a mentor. Next is technical assistance. So this is direct support for certification readiness. What you would do is you would call me and we'd set up an hour, just like I said, to talk through questions about your application. What's the inspection look like? What does this organic regulation mean? What am I missing? What do I even not know about? And the whole point of the mentorship program and the technical assistance is just to remove this shroud of mystery from this process. Our goal is to make it as straightforward as possible and guide you through it step by step. Next is community building, top hosts events and networking stuff, field days, workshops, webinars, conferences. A lot of those are not happening here in Alaska, but many of them, most of them are virtual. And so it's totally open to Alaskan producers to join those as well. And finally, workforce development. The goal is to grow the organic workforce, expand the industry, and offer greater levels of support. There's a huge demand for organic goods, actually more than what we can currently supply. And so it's definitely in our best interest as a nation to invest in this type of production and help producers in any way we can to become certified, if that's what works for them. Some generalized resources out there. These are used nationwide. We have ATRA, Sustainable Agriculture, eOrganic. All of these sites and programs have really excellent resources available to you. I want to point your attention to the bottom one. The top website is www.organictransition.org. It's very helpful. We're hoping this is your one-stop shop for anything you need to know about getting certified organic. You can sign up for the mentorship on this website. You can schedule some technical assistance, just one-on-one FaceTime with one of us to help you through the process. And ideally, it's just helpful for them. So I think that is the end of my section. So JJ, I'll pass it off to you. JJ's down in, are you in Oregon, JJ?
I am in Eugene, Oregon. Hello, everyone, and thank you for letting me remotely beam myself into your company. I am the Senior Quality Assurance Specialist at Oregon Tilth. Essentially, that means I deal a lot with our policies, with our procedures, and manage our accreditation activities with the various governmental bodies that we do our work under. And just to give you a little bit of my own background, I've been in this sustainable and organic agricultural world for about 15 years. As a farmer, I've owned and operated my own Oregon Tilth certified organic farm as an organic inspector, as a certification officer, that person that makes the reviews, and now in this role. So I've seen this industry from just about every angle you can look at it. And I wanted to take a little bit of time to go into a bit more detail about what organic certification looks like in Alaska. I will state right at the front here that I'm not going to be sharing any kind of confidential information. Most of this would be accessible to anyone in the Organic Integrity Database website that Claire talked about a little bit. And I'm not here to provide any sort of advice or business suggestions either. As with any decision you make for your farm or operation, these considerations must be unique to your own context and your own circumstances. This is intended to provide some examples of what organic certification might look like in Alaska under the unique conditions you have there. So if we can go to the next slide. The first thing I'd like to talk about is kelp. This is, I know, a big topic of conversation right now, and it is pertinent to organic considerations as well. In organic agriculture, kelp is widely used by livestock producers as a feed source. Organic livestock must be fed organic feed, and that created a need for certified organic kelp. The challenge here, as Claire alluded to earlier, is that the organic regulations do require soil maintenance as part of being a certified organic producer, and there's no soil involved with kelp. So initially, kelp was wild harvested. Claire also talked a little bit about that, and that fits somewhat well into the organic regulations, but cultivated kelp production has emerged as a developing industry, increasing the production of this not just for livestock, but for human consumption as well. And there's been increasing interest in what cultivated kelp production would look like under an organic system. So Oregon Tilth has been partnering with some other certification agencies that certify kelp producers, with the kelp production industry, and we've been collaborating to develop a proposed system for producing certified organic kelp that takes the intent and principles of the organic regulations and translates it into the marine environment. So the requirement to build and maintain soil would not be present there, but we would take a different lens to ensuring that the kelp is produced in an ecologically sound way, and many of the same principles in terms of minimal or no use of non-allowed synthetic substances would still apply. Oregon Tilth currently certifies a small number of kelp producers and processors in Alaska, but we've got more applicants in the pipeline, and it's an exciting growth opportunity that is well tailored to some of the unique conditions you have there. We can go to the next slide now. Another area of growing interest in Alaska is rhodiola. This is a slow-growing plant that's native to Arctic growing conditions. It's well adapted to the growing conditions you have in Alaska, and it's in demand as an ingredient by supplement manufacturers for its purported benefits as an adaptogen, providing physical and mental recovery support. The top program actually did a study in 2024 that identified growing local and national demand for organic Alaskan rhodiola. And in the study that was done, there was a projection of possible revenues of $60,000 to $120,000 per acre. So certainly it's an opportunity that I think warrants consideration and further exploration. Oregon Tilth does certify a small number of rhodiola producers in Alaska right now. We also certify rhodiola processors in the lower 48, and it's another area where there is a growing interest that may be well tailored to Alaskan conditions. We'll do the next slide, please. The third thing I wanted to talk about was birch sap and birch syrup. Now, there's only one operation in Alaska that we currently certify for producing birch sap and birch syrup. So I don't necessarily want to hold this up as a big growth opportunity, but I want to talk about it as an example of getting creative with your conditions and the resources that are available to you. This is something that is growing in Alaska, and it is a product that can be produced in Alaska's unique conditions, but then distributed outside of the state. And that's something that is worth considering when developing your own plan for organic production. Speaking from my own experience, the farm that I owned and operated was a seed farm. Claire mentioned the need for there to be certified organic seed if commercially available, which means there's a market opportunity for those who can grow certified organic feed and sell it to the people who would have to purchase it for use on their operations. Trying to take that kind of mindset in terms of what can be produced locally, but then distributed to more than just local markets can help you find an opportunity like producing birch sap or birch syrup that makes you stand out and gives you a unique access point into the organic marketplace. We'll do one more slide, please. And the last thing to mention is local markets. We do certify the sort of some operations in Alaska that represent sort of classic ideal of what a organic farm is: small, highly diversified fruit and vegetable producers. Now, the growing season in Alaska is quite short, and the established culture in Alaska may not create a lot of inherent value in organic certification now. But what I can say is, while I live in Oregon now, I spent a lot of time living and farming in Texas. And when I first moved to Texas, having a organic brand or an organic certification on your produce didn't necessarily mean all that much to the people there. Their culture in Texas was more about getting to know the producer personally and not putting as much importance on the certified organic seal. I've also lived and farmed in California as well as Oregon, where having that certified organic seal makes a big difference as part of the local food culture. And what I saw in my time in Texas, as more and more people from California moved to Texas, is that the importance of having that seal began to grow. Those conditions can change, those cultures can evolve, and being an early adopter can be a big advantage. One of the farms I was familiar with in the Central Texas region, one of the first to get certified as a little small operation, had the advantage of being the only certified organic farm once that demand grew, and their business was able to grow significantly as well in parallel with that. So thinking about those kind of strategic opportunities to make yourself stand out amid a potentially changing marketplace can also be advantageous just in the local context. So those are some examples of what people in Alaska are doing under organic certification. It's not necessarily intended to be an exhaustive list of all the possibilities that are available to you, but to give you an idea of some of the unique opportunities that do exist there. And I wanted to kind of wrap it up there to leave as much time as possible so that anybody present, either there on site or remotely, can ask Claire or I any questions you have about any aspect of organic certification.
Thanks so much, JJ. One housekeeping thing, the owl takes a second to find you. So if you do have a question, just sort of do a speaking and then ask your question so I can find you in the room. That would be great. But yeah, I'll open it up. Thanks so much, Amy.
Hello.
No, it'll just show on here. Thank you.
Let's see, so our certifiers, I guess, do they do a general, like many different types of farms? Or are they specific? And I'm asking because a current certified organic farm, Rosy Creek Farm, just down the road from me, does certified organic marijuana. But could a certifier, that same certifier, do my farm, which has vegetables?
Yes. Yeah, so certifiers certify under those 4 scopes I mentioned. There's crops, wild crops, livestock, and handling. And so both of you, both marijuana growers and vegetable growers, would fall under crops. Not all certifiers do all those scopes. So one might just do crops and they wouldn't do livestock, and that's what's important to do your research. But as an example, Oregon still certifies all of those 4 scopes. And so both of those operations would be certified.
I have one more question. How do I prove, or do I need to prove that no prohibitive substances have been used on my land in the past 3 years?
You either need to know yourself, we would trust you if you've owned the land for 3 years and you sign a legal document saying nothing has been applied, then yeah, there's trust in that. If you haven't owned the land or you're leasing it, you would need to get someone who has either managed the land, lived on the land, anyone who can, it doesn't have to be even the previous owner, anyone who can attest to the fact that that land has been free of prohibited substances can sign that paper, and it's part of your organic system plan, your application. Yeah, I think, and if you cannot do either of those things, then unfortunately you must wait the 3-year transition period.
I have a question. When I had contacted through the website, the certifiers before the particular certification agencies were like a year out before they could take on any new producers. Is that still the case?
JJ, I'm gonna let you take that one if you heard it. I think you have better insight.
Could you repeat that question? It came in a little bit broken up.
Do you want to or do you want to? She was asking that it seems like a lot of certifiers have like a year-long wait time before they would even be able to get to someone's operation if they just applied, just a long waiting list.
It really does depend on the kind of internal circumstances of that certifier, and what their inspector availability would be. So, because there's 2 kind of components to the answer to your question. The first is when you are seeking organic certification, you develop the OSP, the Organic System Plan, and submit it for an initial review. And the ability of the certifier to complete that initial review of your application depends on how ahead of or behind of their current workload they are. Certifiers generally prioritize new applicants. We want to get as many people into the organic program as we possibly can, but we still have to provide good service to our established clients, and there's a balance there. So depending on staffing levels, general workload, it can take some time to complete that initial review. The second, but more significant factor is inspector availability. As Claire mentioned, having an inspector able to travel there, it requires a good deal of planning. If we're going to try and group as many operations as possible to reduce the cost, that adds on to the lead time necessary to figure out all of those logistics. And again, there's a difference between different certifiers. Some certifiers use primarily staff inspectors, and there's maybe a little bit more flexibility in how they deploy their resources there. Other certifiers use independent contractors to do their inspections, and sometimes that can lead to more limited availability. So it really does depend on those factors, and time of the year, of course, when you submit your application, because you're more likely to get a quicker turnaround if you're applying at the start of the year and you can get that inspection in the spring or summer than if you're submitting your application in the fall. Trying to get an inspector up to Alaska in the middle of winter might prove challenging.
And I just have one follow-up question. So, and then in terms of record keeping, so if you have a diversified vegetable operation, you raise a lot of different products, you're literally gonna have to keep a receipt for every single seed packet, right? Every input. And then what's the retention record?
You need to hold on to records for 5 years. Obviously, your first year is your first year. But some inspector could come to your farm 4 years later and say, okay, I would love to see something from 4 years ago. I don't think that often happens, but we just recently, the top program, the Northwest Top program, ran a huge campaign on developing resources on record keeping to try and remove some of that stress and how daunting it seems. So I'd be happy to, if I can get your email after this, I'd be happy to send those your way.
Okay.
But what a lot of people do is for the seeds, keeping track of that, literally just your invoice from the seed company is enough. So it doesn't have to be, it's never meant to be anything absurd. It's just meant to be, pick a system that works for you, that shows the inspector and your certifier that you at least have some level of traceability of what you're doing.
I have a question over here. Earlier you mentioned, I can't remember, you said certifiers versus inspectors. No, they do it differently, and some of them will do by crop. So say like, I'm a diversified vegetable farm and I grow like 30 different crops. So that with some inspectors or certifiers, that would be, I have to get each of those crops certified, and then what happens if like, say like a couple years ago in the spring, I decided, ooh, I've never grown Tokyo Bacana, and I think I want to put that in the CSA this year. So is that something that all of a sudden then that crop wouldn't be certified organic, even if the rest of my crops were?
That's a super fair question. JJ, help me understand, was it WSDA that used to charge by the crop for certification at one point?
That I'm not sure about. Different certifiers use really different methods for determining their fees. Most use some kind of sales-based metric, like Oregon Tilth does. The certification fee you would be charged is largely based on how much organic product you're selling, but not every certifier does it that way, and so I can't speak kind of globally about that.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
What I will say is that most certifiers I've heard of do not do a by crop charge. For Oregon Tilth does not. You would get charged a fee for being a new applicant. You get charged a baseline fee for your certification for crops, and then you'd be charged with the inspection costs.
And in terms of adding a new crop, provided the kind of production that you're doing is crop production, it falls under that scope. That's something that is a kind of a rolling update. We certify lots of highly diversified producers that are doing dozens of different crop types all throughout the year. And we're able to reflect that on the certificate so that everything is covered. Most of the time, people selling directly to the consumers, like in a CSA model or at farmers market, they just need to have miscellaneous or mixed fruits and vegetables on their certificates, and that keeps them covered. You still would have to do more detailed record keeping for yourself in terms of the specific seeds you're using and where they're planted in your fields, because crop rotation is another thing that we look at under the organic regulations. But that's not necessarily something that needs to be provided as a real-time update to the certifier. Like every time you're turning over a particular bed, you need to tell your certifier what's going in there. We do ask a lot, but not quite that much.
Very question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see. Can you give some examples of how much Alaskan farmers are paying for inspections?
Do you have insight, JJ?
That's not something I could answer just either in a general sense or in a specific sense. I don't currently deal with that aspect of things. And I can tell you it would be highly variable because the inspection fee is going to include the expense for travel and for lodging. And some inspectors are going to be better at, planning ahead and making sure they're buying their plane ticket when they're cheapest, versus those that maybe don't plan as successfully and are paying more. Again, if you're able to use the same certifier that certifies other operations in your general proximity, you have an inspector making a single trip, that can result in lower costs. Whereas if you're the only operation, or maybe there's only one other operation being covered under that inspection trip, you're gonna be bearing the brunt of most of those travel costs yourself. So it is gonna vary widely, and I unfortunately can't give you more information than that.
I know that there are currently, yeah, please.
Can you speak to your certification fees outside of the travel and personnel services of your team that comes up to certify? Like you said, the Oregon tilt was based off of the amount that the farm is selling. So can you please speak to that? And then I have like a.
Yeah, absolutely. So Oregon Tilth has a fee schedule that we provide to our operations in advance. So you have an idea of what sort of base certification fees you're going to be looking at. Now, this is outside of the inspection fees because of all the very specific contextual issues I was mentioning before. But we do have a preset fee schedule, which I don't have open here on my desk right now, but I'm working frantically to get open for you so I can give you some specific numbers and not just spout off some vague generalizations.
JJ, off the top of my head, I know that there's a first time applicant fee at Oregon Tilt that's $300. You would pay that the first year you apply and then never. And then the certification for just crops would be $325 on top of it.
And I work for the Division of Agriculture, and we do have a cost share program that we administer for organic certification that reimburse people. I believe it's been a while. Somebody else in my office does that program, but I think it's up to $750 reimbursement. So it can get certified, turn in all your receipts and stuff, and you can get a $750 reimbursement.
So on that one, I will say the cost share program was unfortunately reduced in recent years to a maximum of $500. It used to be $750 and covering up to 75% of your certification fees. That was reduced a few years ago to 50%. And the current status of the cost share program is in flux, as is many federally funded programs through USDA.
We have not heard about that program, but I do want to, but I do want to make note that it was $500 and they reverted back to the $750. I don't know if you're aware of that, but they did, or up to 75% of the costs. But they only gave states the same amount of money as if it was going to be a $500 reimbursement.
So interesting. So Alaska kicked in that extra bit. That's really cool.
No, we didn't kick it in. It's my understanding that it went back up to 750. But you can always apply through NSA.
Yeah.
Get that reimbursement.
And there are discussions happening at the Division of Ag. Attempts are gonna be made to try and train up an inspector here in Alaska, which would hopefully cut down costs significantly for producers who live here. And that's in the works.
Yeah, we're gonna look at it like timeline to see how if we can get that accomplished. Yeah.
That one other question.
Comment.
Yeah. At what point in the application process would a farm learn how much the inspection will cost?
Ooh, great question.
So that's another difficult thing to give a specific answer to. You would be provided with a general estimate at the time that you submit your application, and as part of the initial review process, a kind of very ballpark estimate is given. But unfortunately, there's no real accurate way to provide a reliable estimate, in part because another aspect of the inspection fee is the time the inspector takes to perform the audit. And that's highly contingent upon the size of the operation, the complexity of the operation, and frankly, how together the operation is. A really well-organized operation with good records that does everything by the books can have a pretty quick inspection. It's not going to take more than couple of hours maybe. An operation that does not have good records and is maybe not doing all the things they're supposed to under the regulations, so non-compliances get discovered, that will take more time and result in a more expensive inspection. And just so I do have the fee schedule from last year up. This is Oregon tilth only, no claims made on behalf of other certification agencies. But for farms, our lowest level, which is annual sales of $10,000 and under, is a $325 certification fee. And then there's that new client application fee Claire mentioned. On top of that for the first time, and then every year thereafter, that would be the base certification fee. It goes up as sales go up. So just picking out a couple of these tiers sort of at random. At $40,000 a year in annual sales, the certification fee is $625. At $100,000 in annual sales, it's $850. At $200,000 in annual sales, it's $1,300. $500,000 in annual sales, you're at $2,500. $1 million in annual sales, you're at a little over $3,200 in annual certification fees. So, but the idea is as you become more successful as an organic business, the fees that you pay increase as well.
Question. Can a hydroponics farm be organic?
It depends on who you ask. So this is what I will say. The National Organic Program has sent out an official statement that they feel a hydroponic operation that complies with the National Organic Program regulations is eligible for organic certification. Where there is disagreement among different certifiers is whether or not, well, one, what is a hydroponic operation? Because we have to define that first. And then two, depending on how you define it, is it even inherently possible for the hydroponic operation to comply with those regulations? A big part of it is the soil component that Claire mentioned, or at least an analog for that, like some way of cycling nutrients and natural resources, or ensuring that not all of the crop fertility is provided through external sources. Again, different certifiers are going to have different policies on this. I can speak only on behalf of Oregon Tilth as we would define a hydroponic operation, which is, again, all the growing medium is entirely liquid, and the fertility sources are all provided through external means. So this is not like a aquaponic operation involving fish or some other kind of bioponic operation. A pure hydroponic operation like that, Oregon Tilth does not certify those operations. You may get a different answer from a different certifier.
Thank you.
You mentioned the like 3 different places on one of your slides where you get like, the list of.
Yeah.
Are those the same or is Washington State different from like if Alaska had one or?
I don't know if Alaska has one. I'm JJ, I don't know if you can speak to that, but the list.
Maybe I'll look at Washington's and what it doesn't lie here.
Oh, okay. Does Alaska have its own materials list, approved materials list?
Nope, the materials list is universal. So no matter where you are in the world, it is the same list of allowed and prohibited substances. There's no difference on growing region.
So Washington has their own just as a way of making it available.
Yeah. That Washington State list is used by operations all over the world, not just in the States, but global as well.
While he is frozen. Oh. Oh. I will mention that
Uh-oh.
it is important that there are.
He's back, he's back.
Oh, great.
Could you say your last 2 sentences again, if you remember them?
Yes, it was. I was just saying that the inputs that are approved by the Washington State Department of Agriculture for organic use can be used and are used globally. Operations all over the world use those inputs, not just ones in Washington or the United States.
Thank you.
I want to say there are an infinite number of materials that you could use in an operation. And none of those lists are 100% comprehensive because maybe you have thought of a different input that no one has ever thought of before. So if you're working with a certifier, it's just really important to just ask them first before you make a mistake and apply something that might be prohibited.
Well, Oregon Tilth reviews hundreds of new inputs and materials every year because farmers are constantly thinking of new things to use to help their operations, and we're reviewing those all the time.
How does that process work to maintain a global list? Like if 2 different certifiers are reviewing something at the same time, sorry, I'm a little sorry.
Yeah.
And then you disagree, for example, then what happens? How do you stay getting along in agreement on that? That's amazing.
Yeah. Certifiers do work in tandem every now and again for material review purposes, correct, JJ?
We can. So all these certifiers generally try to keep in touch with each other when we're dealing with uncertainties, potentially controversial topics. The goal is on most things to have a universal alignment to really disincentivize shopping around for certifiers based on policies or interpretations of the regs. The expectations is that this is a universal standard that no matter who certified the product, its organicness is the same. And so when it comes to materials, most certifiers primarily rely on these third-party material review organizations Claire mentioned, like OMRI, WSDA. There are a few others as well that do those independent reviews of materials to determine their suitability for use on organic operations. And there are occasionally times where an in-house review at a certifier conflicts with the decision made by another certifier. This actually has come up recently, and the reps from the different certifiers get together and they talk about why each of them came to that conclusion. And oftentimes one of them says, I see why you decided that, and I see why we decided it wrong, and we're going to have to go back and change the decision that we made.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes left in this session. If anyone has burning desires, burning questions.
And if you think of questions later and you're wondering how to get them answered, I would love your information. You can reach out to me, or if you sign this interest sheet, I'll reach out to you. I have a QR code you can scan that puts you directly to the top website if you're interested in having a mentor or getting technical assistance. So yeah, I can come to you guys if you want to put your information down or if you want my information. And when you email top@tilth.org or you call that number, it's just me on the other side. We're not going to put you through the ringer of talking to a bunch of different people. So yeah, it would be great to help you guys transition organic. If it's something you're interested in. Do you have a question?
I do, I've got one here at the back minute.
Yeah.
So we have a local fish meal plant, processing a variety of fish. And they do provide some of that fish meal available to mix with, say, peat or whatever else to create a fishing feed. What, is that an input that would have to be certified itself as organic to be able to put as a fertilizer on an organic farm?
Get a picture. Did you hear that? Do you have?
Yeah,
do you have
that was about whether or not the fish needs to be certified to use it as a fertility input on the farm. Yeah, under the U.S. organic program, fish can't be certified organic. So if that were a requirement, no one could use any fish-based fertility inputs on their farms, which would be very unfortunate. Happily, that's not the case. We have other things we need to check to make sure that the fish product does not contain any explicitly prohibited substances. But fish byproducts, fish meals, fish emulsions, other fish-based fertility inputs are widely used on organic farms. Many of them are already OMRI listed, but even if it's not, if you would just need to collect a little bit of information from the producer of that input as to the ingredients in the product, and we would do our in-house review to ensure that there was nothing that would jeopardize the organic status of your land.
And the same goes with any mulch materials or plant materials or manure. It does not have to be certified organic if it's a natural product, and you can verify there's no explicit prohibited substances in it.
Mhm.
What about kelp with its naturally occurring arsenic?
Oh, I have no idea. JJ, kelp has arsenic. What do you say to that?
Kelp has arsenic in it? Is that was the statement?
No, I paraphrased that.
Yeah, I mean, so again, the distinction, one of the main distinctions within the organic regulations is synthetic versus non-synthetic. And so and the way that breaks down is unless it is, there's a carve out made for it, synthetic stuff, not allowed. And unless it's explicitly prohibited, non-synthetic stuff is allowed. And so the fact that there might be arsenic in kelp, it's a naturally occurring arsenic and from the earth and other processes, that's not going to preclude the use of it as a fertility input on the farm or even as a finished product. One of the most notorious crops for containing arsenic is rice. It's a very potent bioaccumulator of arsenic, especially in the hulls. Rice hulls are frequently used both on crops and as a processing aid for manufactured food as well. And what makes it eligible or not is not whether or not it contains arsenic.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you, everyone.